It's the Regular Expressions Podcast. Join Noah Heldman and Ben Griswold as they talk about technology consulting, AI, and more. In episode 30, Noah and Ben welcome Andy LaMora, CTO of ePon Technologies USA, to discuss the latest on consulting, AI, the SDLC, and more. Andy also answers the 5 questions.
Hello and welcome to the Regular Expressions Podcast. I'm Noah Heldman, with me Ben Griswold as always. Today's special guest is Andy LaMora, someone I've known for a few years and Ben just met recently. And Ben, I think you have a question for Andy to get us going.
Yeah, Andy, rumor has it you've had a genuinely unusual career path getting into tech. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I haven't heard this question in a while, so thanks for bringing it up. My undergraduate work was in biology, which maybe isn't all that unusual. But one of the first things I had to do was to automate the sectioning of paraffin-fixed embryonic ears from chickens. And it was a manual and difficult process, and we had a lot of distortion, and they thought, hey, shouldn't we be able to automate this with CCD cameras and take pictures and reconstruct it? So as a freshman, that was one of the first things I got to help with. And over the years, just the computer work just overtook all the other work I was doing, and it led me in some wonderful places, and I loved it. And so when I graduated into the dot-com boom, that's what I did. But from there, something that comes up a good bit is crowdsourcing. So my work took me through labs at different times, and I saw work being performed there. This is a little bit after the dot-com boom, where the kinds of solutions that would take Johns Hopkins several months to produce could get done in like 3 or 4 days if you post it out as a challenge. With an equally sound solution. So from that point on, I was hooked and have just ridden that train until recent years.
Yeah, amazing. And crowdsourcing is kind of how you and I are connected, right? I was working for Topcoder in that crowdsourcing world, and you had worked there prior and then came back as an advisor to help people like me who still didn't quite get it, but we're seeing the value of it. So I'm curious, with that model and all of the really interesting projects that Topcoder did to solve some pretty crazy problems, you have a bunch of people all around the world, diverse backgrounds, attacking the same problem. And we have an interesting shift in technology with AI, where you've got models that are hopefully as diverse, probably not in reality, given where they're coming from, but attacking the same problem, multiple sub-agents attacking the same problem. Does AI really change the value of that model? Is there something still magical about crowdsourcing with real humans that differentiates? And then are there generalist skill sets versus specialist skill sets that you bring to bear on a problem like that? How do you see that equation?
I don't know, Noah. I kind of feel like you're asking me a religious and a political question all at the same time. Well, that's a good company. I would say it's a great question. I'd break it down in a few different ways. First of all, I think the crowdsourcing experience for all of us who are involved in it was about as good a training set as you can get for how to work with AI today. There are so many aspects of it that are exactly the same, which is taking a piece of a problem and putting it out there for a solution to come back in. In user experience is very similar to what we do with AI today, and the things you need to go through to trust it are also similar. But I'd say one thing that's different is looked at in a couple different ways. And that, I'll just state what it is. There's a difference between slow thinking and fast thinking. And if you're saying, well, hang on a second, that's Daniel Kahneman, yes, it is. But beyond that, I think it also describes how AI is working pretty well, because AI is at its core common expertise packaged up in a box that can be reliably accessed in a repeatable way. So it's common expertise. And it does a great job with that. We're seeing data migrations and things like that are done in a blink now because of working with these tool sets. But slow, deliberative problem-solving work is and will probably remain a human task. Mm-hmm. And on that part, crowdsourcing still has all the magic that it had before. In fact, I'd even point out that a lot of the people who competed so effectively on a lot of our crowdsourcing are now behind the very tools we use. Devin was developed by Topcoder alum.
Right.
Several of them, actually. So I hope that answers your question. I'd say the long and short of it is crowdsourcing is still relevant. Not all problems are code problems, right? And it prepared everybody very well for working effectively with AI now. And I think there is still, for a while, there will continue to be a divide. We'll know how long it'll last, but for a while, there'll still be a divide.
It's making me realize that a part of what made the crowdsourcing model successful was having appropriate structures in place around it. And Topcoder specifically set up project management and the reviewer model, multiple reviewers, because you need that handoff. You need the appropriate framing of the problem. You had amazing problem statement writers, which is a skill in its own right. And that helped create the structure within which these brilliant minds from around the world could jump in and create a solution to a problem in a way that was reviewable in a measurable context. And it's just, you just made me think that's exactly what we have to do with AI now to make it successful. Have you seen that same pattern?
Absolutely. And that's mainly what I mean with translating this. Because even, just to help shout it out, there are solutions flying on the International Space Station today that were built by Topcoder.
Yes.
And went through a crowdsourcing approach, which is kind of surprising to a lot of people. One problem that you and I grappled with was you could get a great algorithmic solution to a problem. And this was really, attention was around, but transformers weren't. It hadn't really quite hit yet. It doesn't mean it's a product. You still have to make it a product, and you still have to understand, when it's actually, what its failure modes are. And that kind of thinking drives what we see in enterprise AI today. There are, about 13 different failure modes that you have to account for at any given time. And you can make a lot of them go away with RBAC handled properly, using the tooling that comes from platforms. You can make some of them go away by starting with a really solid, known good building block, but you can't make them all go away. And you have to be able to develop your AI solution from the ground up, right from the very first day, in a way that you can quickly validate what you built. And that totally came from crowdsourcing. Well, good practices of crowdsourcing apply here.
Right. Yeah. Disparate viewpoints, different solutions. How do you wrangle them all and make sense of them in a consistent way? Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you get the same prompt 2 or 3, you'll get the same answer, different answers to the same prompt, 2 or 3 times simply by asking. And one might be a little bit more right. It's just how the encoding works and where it ends up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Andy, one biologist to another, right? I think all of us who are around tech and software, we don't start there, right? So we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but the AI ecosystem, is it structurally flawed?
That's a good question. I don't think it is. And the reason is, what's the alternatives? Some form of intelligent design for AI, right? And people might argue, yeah, exactly. That is we live in a world of innovation. It's what makes us tick. It's discovery. So people are going to discover as these capabilities. These capabilities don't come out of directed research towards having this sort of AI. I mean, just read intention's all you need. They were trying to beat a deadline. They were trying to get something done in time. And it was only after they wrote it that they realized what they had, right? So to prevent the progress we're having, you'd have to prevent those happy accidents from happening in the first place. So I think the best thing you can do with AI is to get it in its rawest, most haphazard form, as we've seen, out as soon as possible so everyone can burn their hands before the temperature is really serious. And then, we can start, we all learn at different rates through different methods. Most of us learn through practice and by burning our hands. So the more we can build a casual familiarity with the technology and understand what it can do and can't do, better off we're all going to be about designing large-scale applications and systems and solutions with it. There's a lot of great writing on this. If you want a real fun one, it's if anyone builds it, everyone dies. Yep. Always a great Christmas gift.
Yep, I think we both read that. I read it not long after it came out and was immediately scared and then a bit reassured as I realized those claims could be a little bit overblown. Eliezer Yudkowsky is someone who's been making bold claims for 20 plus years. And he's very smart. He's got a lot of well thought out concepts for why things might go sideways. And he might be right, but he's convinced he's right. And I think that's there should be a little bit more room for what else might happen. Maybe we're not as far along as he thinks. Hard to say.
Hard to say. It's definitely an entire podcast topic in and of itself.
It is, yeah.
But I take the same approach to that question as I do our consulting engagements, which is, then what is the answer? And I can't come up with a better one. I've seen ideas that have been proposed, working groups like the W3 working groups, things like that. How long did those take? How much time was there between mid-source TCP/IP and actually using it, and then where we are today, right? Like it takes a while, and in the meantime, the capabilities far exceeding the consensus you need to just communicate between people. So I don't know what the solution, another solution would be.
Well, if you think about Yudkowsky's recommendation, it's, we just all agree that we all work the same way worldwide and protect all these assets from getting into the wrong hands, which is kind of inconceivable to me. There will always be bad actors out there, whether they have access to the most powerful weapons, so to speak, AI weapons, which could be Anthropic mythos if you believe the hype. It's the equivalent of Iran having nuclear weapons, not to get political. It's a scarce resource that's expensive and difficult to put together. Whose hands do you want it to get into? So I look at something like Project Glasswing, which was created to review the Mythos model to see if it's ready for prime time. And they say, no, it's not. We need more government access and review and big company review, which is a little scary in and of itself, right? There's who are the 15 companies that they said should have access and be the gatekeepers to determine whether this should be released to the wild. So there's some concerns there, but I think the approach is trying to address that, to say we've formed a consortium of smart tech people. Maybe it's a limited slice of people, but it's a group that should at least put that first gate in place. So thoughts on that approach to the problem?
Admittedly, I'm not as read in on that as I would like to be. I have some flights coming up, which will take care of the problem. But I would add to that, as you're working through, first of all, I think they have to be careful how they talk about it. Otherwise, they're going to build a conspiracy theory of just, the big 15, whoever that might be. Second, I think any review, as long as the results are shared and validated, is a good thing, right? A step in the right direction. And it's not one and done. right? They are going to try this. We'll all see how it goes. And then there's going to be another iteration. In the meantime, and I know I sound naive like with this, but in the meantime, we do still have law, right?
Yeah.
To some extent. And law is slow, but done right, it has teeth. So at the end of the day, you still have banking regulations, right? You still have, HIPAA. You still have regulations that prevent you from using somebody's credit card transaction history to make a loan decision. And those are the exact failure modes that people are going to experience when there is a problem. So I think it's not the end all be all. We absolutely still, the industry still needs to do this sort of policing. But on top of that, there is a bulwark. And I think the interesting thing will be see how that's strengthened over time. It's not about data per se, it's what you do with it.
Yeah. Good insights.
Andy, I'm going to shift away from the sky is falling kind of talk, although I appreciate the positive spin that you offered there. I want to shift over to the SDLC, right? I think it seems like it's fundamentally shifting now with AI, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Are we throwing it all away? Does it evolve? Will we ever see SDLC the way that it was 10 years ago again? Well, maybe 5 years ago again.
My answer to that shifts between sunrise and sunset. I think I would say, my knee-jerk reaction to this question continues to be Fred Brooks was right. The model is still, you have one engineer who's also the architect who understands the entire context. And now, instead of being surrounded by Scrum or, by trying to communicate through story points that are shared commonly among the whole team, right? You're surrounded by a fleet of AI that does your bidding. So jury's out if that's exactly what the model ends up being, which just brings us right back to 1978. So the SDLC is a descriptor. It's, in my mind, it's not in and of itself a thing. It's a description of the methods that work now based on the tools that you have now and the technology that you have now. The way we do Scrum today couldn't have been done in the year 2000. I think there was Yahoo groups, right? Maybe, or ICQ, right? Like you can't do it over Slack.
Yeah.
So I think it is definitely going to evolve, but not to get quote happy, but one of my favorites is William Gibson, right? The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. So we're starting to see the different models beginning to pop up. This is something that the company I'm at now puts a lot of thought into, and it's an area we do a lot of work. So product engineering, for example, could be having a heyday, because if you focus on building out your baseline components that are known good, are known trusted, that have all the wires dangling out that need to go into your observability, into your auditing, into everything else, right? And it's really well documented to the nines. It's wonderful input for AI. Claude in particular does a great job with it, right? So you can see the product engineering discipline staying as it is, but it's focused now really on components. And product managers and product owners become more enabled with AI, building on top of these hand-built components. So that's one possible future. One that is evolving quickly, though, that I see, I can't speak for everyone, though, is the customer's tolerance for 3-week sprints for sure, even 2-week sprints, starting to come down. And it's really not just the SDLC productivity gets you 15% speed up, because it matters when that speed up hits. If you are at the at the end of your sprint and, you end a little bit early, what are people really doing, right? Like it's maybe they're hitting backlog, maybe they're hitting technical debt, or maybe they're, gilding the lily in the documentation and you actually don't have that much of a speed up, if at all, if any. So the operating model is going to have to change, but that's appropriate. And there are experiments running everywhere right now about what the right approach is, and no one has the answer. There are a lot of companies that have good advice that can share information, say this is what's working over here based on what we see what you're doing. You should try this, but it's going to be a little while, I think, before best practices really settle down.
Yeah, that I like that. There's just so much experimenting that's happening right now. And how can you ultimately get everybody to agree to certain patterns? I think it's just, you can't just come in and say, this is what we've learned. This is what you could do. Like the education's totally changed. We're learning as we go. Oh, I really appreciate your answer. I think that's great.
Yeah, for context on that, this is what we see are COBOL projects.
Right.
As some of my old colleagues are watching this, they're going to get a good laugh out of that. There's cutting edge applications for health, cutting edge applications for in capital markets, BI migrations. It's a pretty broad sample space, and there are some patterns emerging, but the experimentation's everywhere.
Yeah, spot on. When we last talked, I think we were talking about our experience with vibe coding kind of leading to spec coding, being a lot more disciplined with how we approach things. We also have all come through the shift from waterfall to agile in software development methodologies earlier in our careers. And Ben and I were talking about this, where we're leaning into the spec concept because we know that you need to provide really good early inputs into AI, or really into any software system. It's a learning from my career. You better get the requirements right before you do too much. And then you lean on Agile to test those out, get your feedback quickly, and then iterate from there. But I saw someone recently post, it's like, if you take too much time to spec everything, every possible use case, every detail up front, aren't we just back to waterfall? So what's the balance in your mind? How much speccing is the right amount before you let AI agents take on some significant coding task? You mentioned components earlier. Does that come into play? How do you approach that?
You can vibe code your spec.
Yeah, that's true.
So we recently, I'll answer with a story. We recently built out a bank. It's a fully functioning bank infrastructure on AWS. It could pass a regulator's review, except for the treasury test, right? Tomorrow. And it was built entirely through Claude, through spec. So the approach we took was to spec out what we began with regulations, and then sort of from the backwards forward, we thought first about how we wanted to regulate this thing and prove that it was regulated and prove that it was adaptable, right? So as regulations change, it's not an afterthought. Everything, same thing with resiliency and all the rest, right? And it turned out really well. And by simply beginning with the spec and being clear, not so much on requirements per se, although regulations are, well, they're as clear as mud. But anyway, it was good enough. But but being clear on intent. So that's borrowing a little bit from Agile. But if you're clear on intent, whether it's a person or it's a bot, the results are better. They're not perfect. They're not, but they are better. So we're seeing good productivity out of using these tools when you begin with that. Anthropic has some great training on this. You can get it on their skill jar site. Warning, their API one's like 85 modules. So Anthropic, if you're listening, like, why are like 3 or 4 of them only 10 minutes long and one of them is 8 hours?
Yep.
Like, there's a little bit of false.
Ben and I just went through that exact training last week, in fact, and yeah, it's longer than the rest.
Yeah, you gotta be kidding me. But you get through it, and it was. I thought they had some good. I wouldn't say tips, but the structure that they describe lends itself right to this kind of use. I hope I answer your question. I do. I think the most important thing is intent, and I think the purpose of the manifesto, going right back in the beginning, is that the people working on a project knew why they were working on it.
Right.
What the intent was, what the purpose of it was, and it's not that it makes everything perfect. It's just that it makes your errors smaller.
Right. Yeah. So you need the feedback loop quickly. I think that's still the key, right? With waterfall, you might spend a year on a massive project to try to get everything right. And by the time you start working on it, it's already obsolete because the first requirement was a year ago. So the cycle is much shorter, but there are still elements of waterfall that come into play. But you're right. If you have the right intent up front and you are putting something out there that is vetted enough to capture intent effectively, and like you said, you lead with the regulatory side, you're solving a fundamental problem with what it takes to get a bank out in the world, right? Those are table stakes for a bank. And if you approach each problem based on the table stakes and you're drawing those boundaries early, you're much more likely to succeed. But the cycle is still really fast. How long did it take you to spec and build the bank? How much was the spec time? How much was the build time?
Month end to end.
Yeah. Not
full time.
Right.
And some of that was dictating to Claude while I was letting my car drive.
That's amazing.
Some of the parts which was a moment, let me tell you.
No kidding. Not
what's going on.
Not on your bingo card as a freshman in a biology class, right?
No, but I would have been glad to see it.
Yeah.
But that was something. I'll add that just a little bit. I know we're spending a lot of time on this, so we can move on if you want. But I'm sure you're familiar with test-driven design as well, and we're big believers in that, but not to the nth degree of you write every unit test ever, right? To test every single field ever before you write anything. We're kind of more the red-green refactor. So to make sure that as you're building something, you're provably headed in the right direction. And it turns out that that's a great model for developing, especially with Claude, because it's a piece of cake to make sure that you write a few tests first that match your intent, and then it builds between the lines, and it's just easier to trust that way.
Yep, boundaries are good for AI. We know that.
Boundaries are good.
Yeah.
So Andy, you kind of touched upon this. I think when it comes right down to it, like the bank app that you're talking about, right? Like lots of regulation, you're going to need probably very senior people that really understand that space. Perhaps you have engineers that know that space, but I imagine the people that are probably most familiar are product people, right? They're the folks that are looking at what's the value we want to produce. There's some chatter about who's going to win this battle. Is it the product people start coding, or is it the coders start thinking at that higher level? What do you think?
Jury's out. I think in general, I think everything's going to drive to be more efficient. And what that means for companies, what it means, and it's going to extend an evolution that's already begun. There aren't that many Scrum Masters anymore. Certainly there are fewer than there were, right? So the model will continue to evolve. I know I'm stating the obvious. We do have engineers who understand those regulations actually pretty well, because they're responsible in a lot of cases for the auditing going well. But your point remains: who's going to win? Right now, I think expertise wins. So you need to have really good, really solid understanding of why you're doing something, and whether that's for value for the customer, or it's for how you actually have to build this thing so it doesn't torpedo the rest of your business, because it's completely orthogonal to everything else that your IT is running. That's a reality, right? So I actually think it's going to end up being pairs. So I think, you'll continue to see rapid iteration that is you're just expressing yourself with more pain in a way. If a PO who's adept with Claude or fill in the blank, right? It doesn't maybe go to production. It's a really rich expression of intent, except now with different workflows, conditional workflows that they can work through to help better communicate what it is. And then you have engineering teams that turn that into production ready code also with AI. It gets the time between those two things can get, and this is not conjecture, this is what we're seeing, does get shorter if you can build on building blocks. So I'll go back to product engineering I was talking about before. So PE teams working closely with cloud people. And it's a combined team, right? So someone who's working on the Angular templates and someone else who's working on building out all the Lambda backbone you need for A, B, or C, coming together to create that component. It speeds up both sides of that process. So there will be some things that a PO can just go build because they're not building it. It's going on top of these really sound Legos. And, I know the whole industry has been talking about component catalogs for 30 years. But, AI makes it easy to make your own. So it's, I think I think it's going to be a while before one of those horses wins a race. I think you're going to have better return out of these intermediate solutions.
Yeah. Going on 30 years ago, I was, clacking the keyboards. I was a coder, and sitting next to me was a business analyst. And that's just what we did. It was, hey, let's just make this happen. What do you think? Oh no, you got to do your magic over here. Then I throw it over. You do your brain magic and tell me what to do. It was really fun and awesome. I just want a quick follow-up question. You've talked about intent a lot, and you clearly really pay attention to the business aspect of things, right? You start there, and then it's the tech that supports it. The reason I'm asking that is because I think that a lot of the conversation right now is really focused on engineering and how do you measure how fast now, how efficient engineering is, right? And some it's like, how many points have you accomplished? Like, what's your velocity? And that really, that doesn't tell the tale. It's how much value are you bringing into a production environment for the business or its customers. And do you have any thoughts on maybe the wrong way to measure whether or not AI is actually providing value?
Yeah, the wrong way is measuring adoption. Just measuring the number of people who are using it is not the right way. That's, you've heard the term, performance theater. And I think, or in this case, it's adoption theater. So I don't think in very, very early stages, maybe, right? Because you want to see if your message is landing, right? But after that, not so much. So to me, that's the only one that's clearly the wrong one to follow. But after that, we like Dora. So Dora still holds, but it never stands alone, and it was never intended to stand alone, right? But you still need craft. It still needs to be built the right way for the right intent, and you have to measure that whole thing. So we're a consulting company, and what we do going in is we try to nail down the business value before we work on something. It's not always possible. But we try to get consensus on that before we build something. And then it gives you something to track towards, right? So how quickly did we get the 3 times speed up? You needed to migrate 5,000 reports, but you're using AI. Some of those are probably duplicates or zombies, right? How quickly can you retire that 5,000, like 25% of them so you never touch them? right? And then you've got another 25% of them that will work better if they go behind, a unified model or better semantic layer, right? So the types of metrics that you want to measure all stem from what's the point in the first place. And then you get into, we had to build a thing to do that thing. How quickly did we build the thing? And how often did we have to revisit it? So, good old meta, right? So it's, those metrics are still sound in my opinion, but you need to tie it to what the heck is the point and make sure that you're tracking that. Because if you don't, all you're doing is creating shadow IT. Because if you're in a big organization, someone else is going to go do that, right? Because they just want their stuff.
Yeah.
So,
well,
and I know we've all experienced
speaking
that.
of shadow IT, so you're using AI regularly in your day-to-day. You mentioned Claude Code. I'm sure you're using other tools as well. What are you using, even if you don't consider it shadow IT or shadow AI, but just things that you're doing to learn, right? You talked about the Claude, the skill jar course. You probably are trying out tools. Ben and I do this probably every day. There's some new tool we install, try it out, throw it to the side. It's just like, it's part of learning. What things are sticking for you? What's working? What have you abandoned? What are you kind of hopeful for in the AI tool space?
Oh man, how much time do we have? So you hope you try and abandon more than you adopt, So we're a consulting firm, so we stood up a couple centers of excellence. And we also, in our shop, we also are partners with Snowflake and AWS. And I like the platforms because they bring you good, solid tools that have boundaries built in if you want to use them. As soon as you start getting custom, it gets a little wiggly. But before then, and then it gets the cliffs get very steep after that. But before then, they work real well. So we had a center of excellence around AI that followed a few different tracks. One thrust was architecture. So looking at, is RAG going to go away to MCP? Do you need MCP and RAG? How do they work? What are the failure modes? Another one is AI and the SDLC. So we had people that were pursuing that, and we saw quite a bit. Cursor was a winner. People really, but Cursor has started to recede to Claude this year. And we went pretty big on Claude this year because we were able to work with Anthropic. So the COEs create a space for people to try things out. Then we also have accelerators that we have to build just like everyone else does. And a lot of it has been figuring out, back to Gibson, where is the future? Who's got the inside line on the future today? And then we try to cross-pollinate. So somebody's really got a huge gain out of using this tool in one customer context. We try to assign them to another customer team to spend some time and see if they can bring that to that team and make an impact, because it is really hard to experiment with new tooling on a customer's project if it wasn't built into the project. So yeah, that's the reality we work in, and that's a solution that's been effective for us.
Quick,
and I like it anyway. I see it working at big companies that way too.
Yeah, distinguished
engineers or so on.
Just want your hot take on the Claude Code versus Cursor debate, because Ben and I have this daily. We've gone pretty deep with both of them. Did all the trainings on the Claude side. Right now, both Ben and I prefer Cursor, and we tend to use the Opus 4.6 model or the Sonnet 4.6 model when we're doing it, if not the Composer 2 model from Cursor themselves. And overall, slightly better experience and results for us lately. But things shift. I'm curious why Claude is appearing as the leader over Cursor for you right now.
Well, for me personally, I'm CTO, so which means that I major in spreadsheets and PowerPoints and Google Slides in my case. Right? So I have to baseline there. I'm a little higher level than, trust me, I'd like to be. But I've settled on Claude myself because I have found I needed the least amount of rework. it's working really well. Using skills and just being able to send stuff off to Markdown and pick back up. It's working really well. But our team, I wouldn't say it's split 50-50, but maybe 60-40 in favor of Claude right now. We had a lot of gains with Cursor. The flexibility of the Claude framework and what you can do, with the skills, and I'm not getting into like open source skills or anything like that. It's just made it easier for us to share them inside the team. That's been effective for us. And it's what we need, right, as a consulting firm. But we've had a couple people who've gotten wonderful results out of Cursor. We got a slamming one on one of our customers very recently. The same thing. They used Claude, but it was Opus. The model was Opus. I'm sorry, they used Cursor, but the model was Opus. Sure. And in that case, it was connecting to a lot of different BI tool sets, not just one, like several, and dealing with a lot of bad metadata and trying to figure out how to bring order to chaos. So Cursor worked really well for them there.
Great. Yeah, good. It's glad it's not just cut and dried, because I think these things are going to push and pull for a while. Yeah.
Ethan Mollick has done some nice writing on it, and especially around like frameworks and how that changes the value of the underlying model.
Before we get into our 5 questions, Andy, I just have to do a callback to something you said earlier. You were on your phone prompting, I think it was Claude, something like that, and while your car drives. I think the fact that probably none of our listeners picked up on the fact that your car was driving while you were doing this. That jumps out at me. I went on my first Waymo ride over this past weekend, and it was so awesome and comfortable. And there was never for a moment that I was white knuckling the dashboard. It was just, this is fantastic. I totally enjoyed the ride. I should have been coding along the way, but I was with my family and they just slowed everything down.
I wasn't holding the phone. It was voice op. I had it up on Dash.
Okay. All right.
But I've got about 30,000 miles in the last year and a half on FSD.
Wow.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It does the job for me. I'll leave it at that.
Sure.
I won't enter the debate.
Yeah, that's good evidence. I have to bring that to my friends who have a bet that full self-driving is not really ready for prime time yet, and one of them is convinced we're already there, and the other says we're nowhere close. So we'll see.
It depends on what your test is.
Yeah.
I've got hours and hours and hours and hours in the car a few times a week, and it's and now I don't. It's basically riding a train. So it's good enough.
Yeah.
It's not 100% intervention free.
Right. Yeah. Remarkable. Yeah. Well, with that, let's jump into our 5 questions. We ask these of every guest, and love to hear the different answers we get. So right out of the gate, number 1, what is the work-related buzzword or phrase you'd love to ban forever?
Paradigm still wins with me.
Nice. Then I shouldn't admit that I used to have a band called Paradigm.
Well, maybe it's the 2 words together, paradigm change
or shift. Shift. We weren't paradigm shift. Although, I shouldn't have admitted that. But good answer. Yes. No paradigms here.
Yeah. So I'm going to get in front of this question a little bit. I'm going to ask that you do not respond with Claude. Okay. So what's a small habit or tool that makes you 100 or maybe 10% better?
Let's see. I work from home and have an unbelievable spouse. So that right there, there's a huge productivity gain from her right there. The second one I'd say is, I'm going to sound completely banal, but take a walk. So we walk our dogs like 4 times a day.
Wow.
And I get a huge productivity boost as a result, because you have to time box things and you got to get up and go, get a little air, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I hope both your wife as well as the dogs are listening. I think they'll be very excited to have that little hat tip.
I'll send it their way when it's out.
Yeah, jump to the 45-minute mark.
Yeah, the dogs are pseudo-scientific. We didn't always have them. It was only in the last 5 years that we, 6, I guess, that we got them, and so I noticed the difference of just being able, working from home, being able to get up and walk around.
Yeah, they do kind of force your hand on that. And even though we have dogs that are perfectly comfortable just laying on the couch, we all still do better when we're out and walking around. So definitely agree.
Helps.
All right. Number 3, think back to a big career mistake or a funny fail. What happened?
A funny fail. I probably had no short list of those at Topcoder. But I would say I'll turn it a little bit. One thing I did take a career break, and I was wondering if that was a bad idea at one point. And what I did was I went around the country on a motorcycle.
Nice.
Before it was popular, I just want to say. Now everyone's doing it, but it was that. It's right in the heart of your earning years. So it doesn't seem like it would be a great choice, but it ended up being a really, really good one. So for me, that was kind of a fail, because I stepped out of progression paths. I stepped out of, high income earning, and went to spending. But it was a really, really good move. I think about it all the time. Yeah,
that's great. I mean, we're going for a mistake or a fail. So I love how you flipped it. That's great. If you saw me on a motorcycle, that would be a funny fail. So that's
oh, there's some of those too, but I'm still walking, so it all worked out.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely amazing. I'm so excited for you that you did that. Yeah, awesome. Another one you can't answer with AI. Sorry, Andy. But what's the next big thing in tech, specifically tech consulting?
And I can't say AI.
We you know what? Go for it. We'll edit this out, of course. But no.
Yeah. I would say it's coaching, right? But AI is the reason. But it's like it always is. There's always been like 2 flavors to, maybe 3 to consulting, right? One is staff aug, just do stuff and do it for less than your competitors. So with acceptable results, because it's not really an issue of great results when you're doing that kind of thing. So that's one flavor of it. The other flavor is do things that no one else can do, right? Like, you've got a company that has this brilliant idea and they want this really sophisticated computer vision problem that you can't just do with AI, or at least you can't do all of it with AI. You go to a consulting company for that. They'll come help you out and go. And then the other one is your company needs to live. It needs to evolve. You need to be able to keep using the tools. And I think that's going to be the next biggest move is everyone has these tremendously powerful tools. Many times they're getting them through the platforms, right? And hyperscalers and all the rest. The capabilities that come with these things are unbelievable. So knowing what's in them is no small thing, and understanding how to apply them is also no small thing. And I think that's probably where there's going to be the next big thing. And sorry if that's a boring answer, but I think that's where it is.
I was leaning in while you were saying it, so not boring to me.
I like it too. All right, we're going to wrap this up. Question number 5. If you could instantly master one new skill, what would it be?
Piano.
Ooh, I love it. Yeah. Do you play at all?
I play saxophone. I can play any woodwind. If you tell me to sit down and play a G7, I can play it. If you play something that sounds good, No.
Are you? You're not by any chance blowing into the piano, are you, Andy? Because yeah, it doesn't work like that.
Well, I mean, you can do the Jack Black thing, you know.
That's true.
But,
Yeah. The woodwind piano. Oh, that's great. Yeah. My dad was a classical pianist and a music director most of his life. And I grew up playing instruments, and I have my drums on the floor behind me and my keyboard over here. So I've always just kind of felt like I was in his shadow. So I kind of lean towards drums and guitar, and piano has always been the thing I couldn't quite measure up to Dad with. And I'm totally okay with that. It's pretty amazing.
Gotta have your lane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, awesome. I love that. That's a great answer. Those are our questions for you. And we just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. And we'll do this again sometime.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was great to see you both again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. It was our pleasure.